Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 489 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. A good week of grinding Modern Horizons 3 in the proper format, Modern.
I've been playing a lot of Modern too. I've kind of split my time between Modern and Timeless, but that's okay because we have a Timeless expert here as well. Krim, I know you don't really play much Modern right now, but you do play a lot of Timeless. How are you doing today?
I played a little bit of Modern the other week. Still hated it, but yeah. I having the time of my life. Modern Horizons 3, outside of a few things, actually really outside of one card, everything's been pretty damn fun.
Yeah, it's that's going to be our big topic for today. So we actually have Modern Horizons 3 out. It's been out for about a week, and the set's had a pretty big impact on Modern and on Timeless, and even on Legacy, which we're going to talk about a little bit. So that's going to be the biggest topic of our podcast, going over all these new cards, these new decks, the impact of this set on 60 card formats. There's also some other stuff we might get to, some limited news people have been talking about, more secret lair drops, some wording issues on an MH3 card, the Mastery Pass on Magic Arena, so we might bounce around to some of that stuff as we have time, but mostly Modern Horizons 3 and Constructed. Before we get into it though, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit, and Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, you can skip them with Card Conduit. With their curated service, you can send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use the sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. Either way, you'll get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Magic, and more specifically, some Modern Horizons 3. So Richard, I know we were talking offcast like a week ago, right after the set came out, and you're like, I've been playing Modern, but I'm kind of just seeing the same old stuff. Where's all the Modern Horizons 3 cards? Now we're a week into it. Have you seen more Modern Horizons 3? Like, before we get into the decks and the cards, how big of an impact is this set having, do you think?
Huge. Turns out you can't get cards early enough unless you're part of the Daybreak program. So even then, so asterisk. So we're going to talk about a lot of the new cards that are seeing play, but today will be the day that the loan programs turn on, and that is when the true floodgates go. But up until now, it's been like content creators and then like super hardcore people. You know, if you're going to play in the challenge, you're going to fork over the big bucks to buy the cards at inflated prices. But even then, lots and lots of spicy new decks. I would say Modern is a brewer's paradise currently. You can pretty much take any pile, including really old piles from like 4 years ago, that you can tell people just saw Modern Horizons 3 come out. They just resurrected their old decks. I haven't seen Dredge in a minute. But everyone's just coming in, and good luck with your sideboards, okay? Because you don't know what you're going to see. It's all over the place. There's no coherent game plan. You're just like rolling the dice. Hope you don't get scammed out on turn one. And see which janky cards from Modern Horizons 3 you're going to lose to, because you know how disappointed I was when I lost to a Corgi with Tarmogoyf. And I'm like, God, that was one impressive Corgi. Jeez, I had no shot against that. So yeah, Tarmogoyf, I can assure you, is in the tier 6 now.
It's trying. It's still trying. Grim, same question to you, but for Timeless. Like, how big of an impact has Modern Horizons 3 had on Timeless? Like, does it feel like a new format to you, or is it kind of the same stuff with some upgrades?
Well, if you're new and like to older formats and you haven't played Modern, then the scam archetype is real. It's popular. It's all over the place. But as you're starting to see just on the Timeless ladder, almost every deck is adopting some amount of the scam package. I think it is somewhere along the way between ephemerates and all of those effects, or the whatever, not fully dead or whatever. Those are all kind of just showing up in every deck now. That's like fine. I don't think it's like anything too bad, because I think it's Modern Horizons 3 has taken, like, it's definitely made an impact, but I think one of the funniest things to me is that it shows you where Timeless is when I feel like these scam archetypes are actually just kind of fair.
I that is kind of funny that you say that. Yeah, there are a lot of scams going on, but so far, I mean, I think it is one of the best things to do in the format, and it's certainly top
Sure.
tier, but it's not like the only thing in the format. And I think in some weird way, you could even argue it has maybe improved Timeless, because I think
Yeah.
Show and Tell has gotten way less popular thanks to Scam, because it really struggles with Scam. If they just take your key pieces, you have this horrible pile of cards that you're never going to cast in a Show and Tell deck. So it's actually ended up making Timeless a lot fairer in a weird way, where decks that I think before the Scam package came out, like Boros midrange and so forth, would have been horrible. There's no chance you're beating Show and Tell by just playing, the good Boros creatures. Now we're actually
Yo.
really legitimate threats, because Scam is keeping Show and Tell in check. So I think it has had a very positive impact there.
And not only is it a positive impact, as I've said, everything has kind of been bringing in that blink package or whatever, right? So Richard and Seth, don't worry, I took it upon myself. Richard, I know you championed Abzan for a while, and Seth, you love your rhinos, so I was like, well, let's go Abzan mid range, little bit of scamming. You know what's great about Rhino? It pitches to all three elementals.
Pitches to everything, yeah.
And when you resolve it fairly, you just get to Helix people. And with how aggressively people are shocking themselves, hitting themselves now, like you have every fetch now. Every fetch is on Timeless. You're doing all of this. You're like, everybody's like starting at like 10. Like, it's kind of nuts. On top of that, I'm going to just go ahead and say it now. I am sorry. I'm sorry. Richard, you should probably kneel with me here and apologize.
You said
Flage.
Lightning Helix. I knew where this was going.
Yo,
Oh, that
Flage.
card's Yup.
Turns out
Richard-
Flage is the truth. We miscounted one thing, Krim. Every deck is a scam blink deck in 2024. So you just gotta blink that Flage a couple times and let it die, whatever, doesn't matter. It gets there. Flage, one of the unsung heroes. Not many people are talking about it. People are talking about like Vexing Bauble and garbage like that. But Flage, Flage, actually one of the top cards of the format. Nadu
Yep.
is kind of happening. Maybe people are trying. But I think one of the biggest stories out of Modern is someone called John Finkel. Storm is back. It is like the most represented archetype in every challenge. I don't know that it's topped, but people keep trying it. And people haven't successfully hated it out yet. But Ruby Storm, on the backs of Ruby Medallion and Ral Monsoon. I don't know what he's actually called. The Ral, that's basically a medallion and a win con. That is back. Energy is a thing. There's two cards. So they're not dedicated energy decks as you would think, but they could be. But there is what is the 1 mana red removal spell that
Galvanic
gives you
Discharge.
it gives you 3 energy, and then you can use energy to power up. Turns out that's just better Unholy Heat, because you use it to kill a 1-drop, and then the next time you have like an Unholy Heat ready to go. And then Guide of Souls.
Yeah.
Guide of Souls, the 1 mana 1/2 that gives you energy when your creature ETBs, and then pump things when you spend 3 energy on attacks into a +2/+2 flyer. Those 2 cards, you just slam them in just random decks, and then you can declare yourself energy, even though you really don't do anything else with energy. They're strong enough to take it away. So that's super exciting that we got kind of new shells to work with between those 3 decks. And then the dog is actually really good. Philia.
Yeah.
The 2/2 flash.
Oh my god.
When it attacks, it blinks something. Like, everyone's running scam anyway. Might as well just blink those things, right? You can blink to remove like blockers. I died because someone kept blinking Recruiter of the Guard, getting solitudes every time. I'm like, well, this game is just lost unless I kill the dog immediately. So
Yeah,
Uh,
that card's definitely overperformed. I think Guide of Souls might be one of the cards I misevaluated the most. I think the text on that makes it read like a Soul Sister actually does a big disservice because it's very easy to like start reading that card and be like, oh, one drop, like creature DB is a gain of life. It's just a Soul Sister. That's actually the least important text on the card. The game you could delete the gain one life off of Guide of Souls and it would be almost as good as it is now. Like that's actually just like an incidental thing. It's not a card for life gain decks. It's actually just an absurd energy card or aggro card because of its pump ability. I've been playing Boros in Timeless and some in Modern, and that deck is wild. And it doesn't look like that good of a deck. It's just like efficient creatures, some good removal. It's very mid-rangey, right? You don't have any combos or anything like that. You're just like fairly playing creatures and removal spells and attacking. And the card is so good. In Timeless, I went 22-3 up to Mythic with a deck, 88% win rate, which is like kind of scary how good that card is. In Modern, Richard, so I would say there's two right now. I think there's two decks that stand out. We have this huge list of decks that have like gotten new cards or impacted by the new cards. Some of them are just kind of some updates around the fringes. Others are like fully new builds. I think the two that stand out to me, and if you look at the metagame page, the two most played of the new decks, Ruby Storm and Nadu, and these have been two decks that, especially Nadu, has been talked about a lot. Do you think Nadu is a problem? Like, what is your experience with Nadu, Ben? Because we're already having the conversation of like, is it Hogak? Should it be banned? How devastating has it looked in your experience of playing Modern?
So I've seen it once in a Hammer Time show. I felt that was a worse Hammer Time. And then I've seen the dedicated creature Nadu. I thought that was also sus, but I'm also playing Jund. But I'll tell you the biggest reason why this will never take off. So even if it is the best deck, it is the most miserable deck to play on Magic Online you've ever seen, right? Because when you combo off, you need to make 8,000 clicks, and you need to actually make those clicks because your opponent doesn't know if you've won or not, so they'll make you sit through it. It's not like Splinter Twin, where you've got the win and sometimes your opponent forces you to click and you click like 20 times and you're done, right? Nadu just goes forever. So because it is so miserable to play, even if it was good, I think people will just not play it. And I'm not even sure it's like actually good. So I think those two factors alone will keep it out of the metagame, and then it'll probably spike random paper tournaments because no one like has practiced against it or knows what's going on anymore because they just play on Magic Online. But this is one of those cases where the interface does matter, and comboing with Nadu is absolutely miserable.
It's even a little worse than you said. I played on stream last week. We tried the Nadu combo, and the deck felt very strong, but playing it on Moto is even worse than you suggested. All the stuff you said is true, but the problem is the combo involves making tokens, usually with Springheart and Nantucko, so as your lands come into play with Nadu, you keep making these tokens so you have more things to target. On Moto, you don't know what you've targeted and not targeted, so it got very problematic. By the time we had like 10 tokens that all look exactly the same, and Moto doesn't tell you which ones you've used, you're just kind of like randomly moving your Shuku back and forth and hoping that you hit the right one that Nadu triggers until you time out. It's really bad. Krim, have you seen Nadu at all in Timeless? That's one of the... So in a lot of ways, the decks that we see good in Modern are also good in Timeless. Boros, good in both places. Some of the mid-range decks. Nadu's one of the cards though that I haven't seen in Timeless, period.
I've seen people try it. I think that I don't know. I'm curious what they're gonna do to make it like feel like the Modern one. But I don't know. It was just okay. Like it didn't seem too bad. But I imagine it's gonna be a lot of the same there too. Same amount of clicking, same amount of nonsense. It's a lot of work to get through. So there's also a strong chance that's just why we don't see it yet.
And I also think the two most common Modern combo pieces just aren't on Arena. There's no Shuko and there's no Outrider and Core. So it's a lot harder to go fully infinite with, I think, on Arena. The other big deck, Richard, Ruby Storm. This one kind of came by surprise. I know when I was evaluating the flip blockers, Raul was one where I was like, I think it's really good, but it's only good in Storm. It's probably going to be one of the least impactful. Is it really enough to make Storm, a real deck? Seems like the answer, at least for now, is yes. How good is this new mono red, or I guess it splashes some sideboard cards sometimes, but this mono red Storm deck in Modern?
Yeah, it is really good. So you usually see it as Gruul or Boros because it adds a color for sideboard cards to deal with hate, but in essence, it's a mono red deck. The main core pieces are red, and you're very rarely metamorphosing for something that's not red unless you're trying to sideboard hate. But I think this is a real deal. You just play. You're like turn 1, do something. They're like turn 2, I'm going. Right? You're like what? Like you didn't even do anything. You didn't even like filter your hand or anything. And either they kill you outright, or they've drawn like 8 cards in exile and they're gonna kill you the next turn. Like they don't fizzle, right? And a turn 3 kill is super easy, where they just put down a medallion, they play a ritual, and then they just go. And the reason why this deck is so strong is it doesn't cantrip, it draws. So Old Storm, they would just play a bunch of cantrips, and once they build up their cantrip count, they combo, they kill you with the Storm card. This deck, it plays these 2 mana cards that like exile 2 cards until the end of your next turn. You can play them. With the medallion out, that's a 1 mana draw 2. So they're just chaining these things off. Ral comes in at any point. Ral is also a medallion, but then Ral will flip into a win immediately. And most importantly here is they don't have 2 colors, so they never get like screwed up on colors. And they have main deck ways of dealing with like all the hate. So there's the amulet, which I don't even know what it's called. It's a 2 mana amulet. Unstable amulet,
yeah.
That lets you just exile a card and play it. But anytime you cast a spell from exile, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Gets around Leyline. And then so the deck uses Past in Flames, but it definitely does not need Past in Flames to kill you. So even if you bring in Graveyard Hate, you will die. So it is actually very versatile. It's very strong. It's very hard to hate out. I resorted to using real hate for Storm. So instead, like Thalia does absolutely nothing. Thalia does not. It slows them down 1 turn, and then it'll just combo right through a Thalia.
Trinisphere? Is it
a Leyline Void?
Rule of Flying?
Right? So what I use is Damping Sphere. Right? So that one, for every spell you cast, it costs 1 more. I've tried Cindervine's main deck. Kind of works depending on how strong your clock is. You can like deal a lot of damage with Cindervines. But like you kind of need a super dedicated hate, and you can't rely on like just like, oh, I'll just leyline them and it'll be good to go. So I think it's a really strong deck. People said it's gonna get weaker. It's still putting up results. It's happening. Yeah. Storm is real.
What about that new Outlaws Lizard?
Oh, Magebane Lizard or something. It's kind of like Damping Sphere for damage, right? Sort of.
Yeah.
Like whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you got to take a damage and increase the amount of damage for each one you cast.
Yeah, you're scoring off on them.
That's not bad. But a creature is bad because they can grape shot it. I don't like creatures as much. I'd rather them have to find their sideboard cards, but it's slow. Like they're so fast. It's so stupid, right? They go to 3 mana and they just start going. And you're like, if they fizzle, they just go again next turn. It's not a true fizzle where like Old Storm would be out of gas and they're done for. Now they got like 6 cards in exile and they're ready to go again next turn if you don't put a stop to this. So it is so disgusting. And as a fair player, I'm always so like amused. I'm like, really? You did nothing? Like you drew no cards. You're just going off on turn 3? Is this allowed? Judge? It seems so unfair.
It is. It can win on turn 2. Between that and Nadu, we have 2 new combo decks that can win really quickly that have shot up to the top of the format, which I remember before the set released, Richard, you were kind of saying you kind of feel like we need some combo in Modern, right? The format had almost gotten too fair, where it was just these like sloggy mid-range battles. So you think this has been a positive for the format with these 2 new combo decks kind of emerging?
I think so. Even though I hate it, I can't just have people sitting behind like a bunch of removal in the 1 ring, right? And this puts a stop to that, right? This puts a stop to that. So I think, maybe it's a little too good, but we need these combo decks to make sure people aren't just playing like 18 elementals, Necro Dominance, 1 ring like type decks. I think that's not healthy. So I like it that Storm is back. And then we all complain and cry about Storm and try to get it banned. But, I like that there's this rock, paper, scissors metagame going on here.
The real question is, we got a pro tour coming up in 2 weeks, I believe, which features Modern. Do you think Finkel will use this Hall of Fame invite to come back and win with Ruby Storm? Just like show up and he's
I'm
gonna
gonna,
crush with it if he does.
I'm gonna just win real quick.
Yeah.
It's like, this is too good. This is like too good. I can't play this. I gotta play it when I need Goblin Electromancer to stick, you know?
All right, so outside of the big two, which I would say is Nadu and Ruby Storm, what else do we see going on with these new cards in Modern or Crim, also in Timeless? I got a pretty big list here. Eldrazi, Energy, Psychic Frog, Tamiyo and Murktide decks. Flage, we already mentioned, has definitely proven itself to be like a sleeper and be really good. I've seen people fairly playing Sorin just as like a 2-drop in like Scam Shells. Johnny is showing up in like some of the Zoo decks, Naya Landfall decks. There's Energy Control using like Tune the Narrative, Wrath the Skies. We saw Blackburn come in top 16 in a challenge using Necro and the Soul Spikes, Invert Polarity Control, a Necrogoyf and Scam decks. What else? What am I missing? Like, this sounds like a whole new format. Are we in just like a brand new Modern now?
Yeah. I would say that, I mean, it could just be the spike in like, people wanting to just try the new card, see what's broken, what isn't. But for right now, a lot of things are making its way into the formats, and I'm kind of surprised that it actually was kind of I think they knocked it out of the park here so far. Every archetype, specific archetypes got boosted up. They shook up Modern to the point where I don't think it feels like it's abysmal. To like it's not like Modern Horizons 3 just took over like Hogak. So the closest thing I guess is Nadu, right? Outside of that, everything has looked pretty good. Pretty balanced.
I mean, yeah, so far. I mean, it's super early. Should we still be afraid of one of these decks being too good, do you think? Like, is there a Hogak, or do you think Storm, Nadu, it's going to be fine in the end?
We'll see about Nadu.
I'm more, I like get better. You think people don't have a good enough build with the right build? I feel Nadu's easier to hate on. Like, Nadu is easier to like hate out, and like, you look at these lists, like one like Stony Silence type effect, like on a body, like they don't have creature removal, right? Like stuff like that, like can deal with it. Maybe it brings back Jund. Like, I don't know. Like, if you just play mono removal, what's Nadu going to do about it? But
I mean,
here's the problem. This may be because I'm salty because my win rate was about like maybe 25%. Okay, I've never seen. Tarmogoyf has never been this bad, okay? Like, you've never seen so many 1-4/2-3 leagues in your life, right? I can give you great reporting from the X3 bracket of a 5-match event. But Modern feels like it's rock, paper, scissors of deck, mulligan decision, and then like there's no game. Like, I feel like, you decide on your deck and you build your deck, right? And what's really important is your sideboard and main board tech cards. And then how you mulligan is very important. And then, like, the game just does itself. Like, anything they play, you got to remove, right? Like, if you have on-curve removal, you use it because whatever it is going to snowball out of control. And then you play your own thing. And then they got to remove it. And then, like, the game ends whenever, like, someone misses, right? When someone breaks serve, it's over. Like, is it so, like, crazily non-interactive, in your opinion? Like, you just fire off removal and everything, right? Like, you're not letting anything stick, right? Like, monkey, nope. Right?
Yeah.
Did they scam me? Yes or no, right? Like, once you have your opening hands, like, you can kind of just decide how the game plays. And I actually felt it was not as fun as before, but I don't know. It's, again, may have been salty because there was a lot of losing and Tarmogoyf's not being good.
Do you think that's just the product of power creep? Like, there's everything's a must kill threat now. Like, everything's the Avenger level threat, and you have to be able to deal with it. When before, even in good decks, even like powerful top tier decks, there just weren't enough good cards to fill your deck completely with those kind of threats. So you'd sometimes get a reprieve where your opponent, I get the turn off because I had to play this like not super strong card. I feel like that's just not a thing anymore. Every deck is so powerful and so streamlined, and every card is so impactful for what the deck's trying to do. Like you said, like, you do just kind of, the game's almost autopilot, right? Like, what decisions are you really making sometimes? So I can see where you're coming from. I don't know if it makes the format less fun. I've had more fun with Modern since the set came out. I think we've been on this track for a while though. Like I feel like this isn't a new phenomenon. Modern Horizons 3 is just like maybe it's what puts it over the edge, but I feel like that's where we've been going for the last few years, really.
I mean, is this not just what Modern's kind of been? Like,
Increasingly, yeah, more and more
Increasingly. I mean,
so year by year.
all older formats, right? But you remember, Krim, back in the day where it'd be like, I'll let that threat live and I'll clean up with the sweeper. Like, no, it's going to draw like 4 cards in the meantime. You got to remove it immediately, right? Like, we don't get this. Or even if you do get it, right? Where I'm like, I need to save this removal for Murktide. So am I going to take 3 monkey hits? Like, you're never going to survive if you take 3 monkey hits in the meantime, right? Like, so you're going to use it anyway, even though you know what the theoretical decision is. And it ends up leading to basically having no decisions, right? Because your decision is like remove or not remove, like, and you're going to remove anyway. So, and then everything is a 1 mana kill spell, which is what I realized. So Tarmogoyf is so bad now because if you play a 2-drop,
now
it needs to immediately win the game if it lives, right? Because everything is a 1 mana removal spell for literally anything in the game now, right? And the new energy one, like finally stamped it in my head, right? Like there's nothing that survives Leyline Binding, Solitude, Unholy Heat, and then the new energy thing. Like 1 mana removes everything now. So your creature has to do everything. And unfortunately, Tarmogoyf does nothing. So it is so sad to play Tarmogoyf.
Tarmogoyf's too fair, dude.
It is too fair. They just keep adding such efficient removal to the format. Like, why, right? Like,
well, why is Necrogoyf popping up then? Right? Like, is
1 mana.
Necrogoyf?
It's
Yeah,
1
is
mana,
it the 1
but
mana?
it comes back. And I would argue it's not even that good.
I mean, I think it is. I think you hit on a really good point though about Tarmogoyf, because I was thinking about it. And back during Tarmogoyf's heyday, go back and look at some of like the top tier decks from like 2016, pre Ether Revolt era. I think that's when it really started to change.
Fatal
when
Push was the first nail in the coffin.
That was like the first nail, and it's just kind of progressed since Ether Revolt was printed. But people were like legitimately playing Maelstrom Pulses, Terminates, Putrefies. Like those were actual cards. When you're killing a Tarmogoyf with a 2 or 3 mana removal spell, you're kind of fine with Goyf, right? You traded even or even traded up on mana, but when it's always dying to 1 mana removal spells, it loses, I think, a lot of its appeal. And I think if you look at the cards that see play that are 2 or more mana, they either have ETBs or they are that like super high upside Dothy Voidwalker effect or something that's just like, in my deck, if I do the right thing, I just win the game with this card. But Tarmogoyf, like, yeah, I think it might just be done for. And at this point, there's no coming back, right? There's no reversing the sands of time on this one. Like, those spells are there. I guess your best bet's more Nethergoyfs and more callbacks to Tarmogoyf, and one of those being, like, good enough.
I mean, but that also cuts off 3 mana creatures, 4 mana. Like, it cuts, like, everything has to be a 1-drop, right? Like, that's...
Chalice of the Void, baby. Chalice of the Void's back.
Yo, Chalice of the Void is the truth. The Chalice of the Void is actually the truth.
It's so good in Timeless.
Yeah.
If you can get the turn 1 off Ugin's Labyrinth, oh god, that's so good. So, Grim, we've been talking a lot about Modern. I know you mentioned earlier you thought that everything was cool in Timeless except for maybe 1 card. I'm curious what that 1 card is. What was the one thing that maybe is not good in Timeless?
Well, it'd be more like everything's fine except for 1 card, and that one card.
What's the one? Yeah.
Well, it's what we kind of already talked about, right? I'm kind of curious to see what happens with Nadu. Yeah. I am genuinely worried about Nadu. I'm not worried about any of the other things. But I don't know, that's really just it. That I haven't seen anything else that streams needs like a banning or anything like that. So I've actually just had a really good time. They've done a good job with Modern Horizons 3. So I'm kind of a huge fan of it.
So let me ask you on Timeless in specific, because one of the things I was most afraid of heading into this release were the scam decks. And I couldn't see in my head a way that scam would not be like tier 0, the best deck in the format, clearly. Is there any concern about scam being too good at this point, you think? Or is scam actually, like, as weird as it sounds, policing the format in a positive way where it's slowing down some of those combo decks and letting the format be actually a little bit fairer than it was before?
I think that's the funniest thing. I think people are gonna go, "That's wild," the idea of that, but it's true. I think it's kind of just fair. Is that too wild to say? Like, the deck feels fair. What it's doing is keeping the format fair. So yeah, I kind of love it.
I have enjoyed Timeless much more with Scam being the most played thing in the format than when Show and Tell was the most played thing in the format by far. Like, at least with
Yeah.
Scam, you have these weird games sometimes where it's kind of. I had a game yesterday where like the opponent does the scam thing and they take all your cards, but they also spend all their cards. And it's kind of like you start the game over on turn 2, but you each draw a 2-card starting hand or something. And that's like where the game starts. So it does actually sometimes lead to these long, drawn out, interesting games. As opposed to Show and Tell, that's just Show and Tell, put Omniscience into play, cast all my stuff, like win. Like, what are you going to do? So I would, I guess, rather live in a world where Scam is the best thing going than Show and Tell is the best thing going.
And that's a wild thing to say, right? But it's true. I kind of absolutely love it. And I am curious, though, if the meta ever actually catches up and just starts playing what I've been doing in anything that has white. I just main deck Leyline. I just straight up main deck Leyline.
White. I'll just put in all decks. Who's casting
not
it
you-
for 4 mana? You're just slapping it down anyway. So just play it in all colors, right?
You know, Richard? Yeah, maybe. Like, I have just been jamming it and it works. Like, some people just straight up concede.
Some people, oh, the best though. I actually did that too. I built a stack because I was playing against Scam so much. I was like, I'm just gonna troll these people and just like Leyline, rest in peace. So I built that deck and started playing it. A surprising number of people don't realize how Leyline works, and they'll scam into the Leyline, and then their grief will go to the graveyard, and then they'll shame scoop. Those are
Wait, do they need to target themselves? No, right?
No, it just fizzles. It just fizzles.
Yeah. It just fizzles. They essentially just,
because
for fun,
if you Lily
discarded
ultimate,
2
you
cards.
Lily ultimate yourself. It says target player.
Correct.
So you got to teach all newcomers this one rule. You're like, well, no take backsies.
For some odd reason though, the one thing I have noticed this weekend is like I was talking about on stream, and it was a Zoomer check. And it was the amount of people that you would know. It's like, okay, if they bought this Tarmogoyf, they're Zoomers. And I want to let you know that a lot of people be Bolton Goyfs. So just as a listener to the cast, please, before you bolt a Goyf, understand that when the bolt resolves, the Goyf grows.
Yeah, that's an instant in the yard if there's not one in there already. Yeah,
I don't know if they need to metagame for Goyf though. That seems like a waste of time.
Dude, Goyfs be showing up, all right? If not, I'm making it happen.
All right. Here, I want to ask you guys something interesting. We talked about some of the good cards, the cool cards, underrated cards. What are the flops? What were the overhyped cards that you saw do nothing or didn't even show up at all?
Okay,
It's gonna sound sad, but I'm gonna let you know. I think it's the flare.
Which flare?
I think the out of
period,
all
of them,
all flares.
I kind of felt like the flares so far have been a flop, except for Flare of Malice. Flare of Malice has shown up a lot. I've seen a decent amount of it, but the other flares, not so much. I mean, every now and then I run into Flare of Cultivation, from the Titanfield decks. But I thought Flare of Denial would be way more prominent. I also thought Flare of Duplication had to do something. I didn't believe too much in Flare of Fortitude because I thought that was a commander card. So I guess that was spot on. But the blue Flare, I think, was the biggest surprise for me. I thought there'd be a lot more of that. Maybe it's just a little too early, but I thought a little bit more of Volatile Drake and Harbinger of the Seas.
Yeah, I wonder if Merfolk are still not good enough. I definitely agree with those choices. Looking back on our list of top 20 that we did a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, some of the other ones that stick out to me as not doing nearly as well as I expected. Shifting Woodlands. I know Shifting Woodlands, I was really hyped about being busted and gonna delete to this new deck. And so far we just haven't really seen that emerge. Not that it's bad, and it's one of those decks that might be a little harder to build than Storm or something. So maybe we'll get there eventually. But that's a card I haven't really seen do anything. Winter Moon has greatly disappointed me. I've played multiple Winter Moon decks now, and I'm to the point where I think that card's just straight up trash. Like, if you want to like get your friends in Commander, it's great. But as far as 60 card formats, people just don't care. Like, you just fetch out your basics. They can function on 2 or 3 lands anyway. So it's really just like straight up a dead card. It's like shocked me how bad it was. And then I would add Eldrazi to the list, honestly. Like, at least Ulamog, which we had in our top 20. But in general, I've seen some Eldrazi decks, but really, I was expecting more out of Eldrazi. I've not seen nearly as many Eldrazi decks. I know there's like a Breach Emrakul deck that's kind of emerged that has some Eldrazi in it. But really, I was expecting like the return of an Eldrazi Winners style Eldrazi deck. And so far, like, that hasn't really taken off, at least to the extent of some of the other big winners from the set.
Tron's too slow, my friend.
Yeah.
When storm it off. Tamio. People have been trying. It hasn't really done anything, really, but people have been trying, and I will tell you, it's played a lot better than I thought, but it's just too fair. Like, if you're playing against Jund, if you're playing against me, and then you're attacking every turn and making clue tokens, that is like super oppressive, right? Like, you don't even need to crack, you're just making them, and like, you're gonna win the long game because you have all the clues. But that literally applies no pressure and does nothing, right? And you flip it, it is not that impressive. I've seen it in Murktide shells, I've seen it in Is It Control, but it really hasn't panned out. And maybe the best thing you can do is sack it to the flare, but I haven't seen that flare either. I've seen the green flare in Valakut. I haven't seen it in Titan, but Valakut likes to play just lands and not bounce lands, so they have spots for it, but seem really slow, and you needed the Arboreal Grazer to get it to go off. So yeah, those have been disappointing. Harbinger. Merfolk's just not a good deck, man. But Seth was right though. Like, if you get the Harbinger down, it's really hard to remove because you're cut off of red. You only have blue mana, so it is a harder lock piece. And then for Winter Moon, I think you need to be in Death and Taxes to get it to work, right? Like, that enough is not enough. But maybe if you add a Thalia to that, and maybe if you're taxing with Lead and Arbiter, then this becomes relevant. But if you're just slapping it in a deck like you would Blood Moon, it's probably not enough to lock someone away.
No, I do like that idea with Death and Taxes. Once you add an Arbiter and Ghost Quarter to help clean up some of the lands to slip through. The other thing that's awkward is one card that has impressed me is White Orchid Phantom. I think that card's actually really, really good in my experience. I built a deck that tried to play both of them, thinking, oh, I'm really going to get my opponent's lands. They play really awkwardly together, though, because you're giving your opponent basics that help them get out from under the Winter Moon. So I think it's like an either or, even in Death and Taxes. I would probably rather just play Arbiter, White Orchid Phantom, and like Ephemerate my Phantom or whatever, than try to like get you with Winter Moon. So I feel like Winter Moon, I'm very off the Winter Moon plan, which makes me sad because I love that style of card, but it's just not doing it for me. It's also interesting, you mentioned Tamiyo. My Flipwalker rankings have really shifted since this set came out, because I would have had Tamiyo very near the top, but I think Tamiyo's now like in the middle somewhere. I would have had Ral pretty much at the bottom, and Ral's maybe made the most impact so far out of the Flipwalkers. And then the other 3 in the middle are kind of what I expected. Like, they're fine, they're good, they show up in decks, but they're not like oppressive or anything. But I think there's been a pretty big shift with my Flipwalkers as well. What do you think of the Flipwalkers? Like, discounting, we talked about Tamiyo. What about the rest of them? How Johnny, Sorin, Grist? Any thoughts on the rest of the Flipwalker cycle?
I've seen a few Grists. Card was solid. It was fine. It didn't like steal the game or anything, but it did its job.
It's a 1-drop.
Yeah. And then I haven't actually seen all that much of Sorin. I see Sorin, it usually just dies or they lose the game, and then but then like I haven't seen the funny interaction I have with Ral, I think, is that one time I ran into him, the player lost every flip.
I've been there.
And they just died. Like, I just hit them with creatures, and they just kept losing flips. Not to say it's bad, it's just funny. Like,
that is one of the infuriating aspects of the card. I don't know if you played the Storm deck at all or any of the Ral decks, but it does put you in this weird position where you're like, okay, I really want to wait to flip to get as much loyalty as possible. So you're like, oh, I got another spell or two in hand. All right, so I win the flip. I'm not going to flip this time, though. So I'm just going to leave it. And then you have like another spell to cast. But if you whiff on that one, you don't get to flip at all. So there is this weird like dichotomy of like, when do you actually flip the Ral? How long do you leave it out? Can you afford to lose the cost reduction? So it's actually like a brawl that has a ton of play to it. There's so many decision points, I think, more than you'd think with Ral when you just think, oh, it's just like a brawl. I played and win the game. But there's actually a lot going on with that card.
So by the numbers, Soren is the most successful flip blocker. He's won 2
Interesting.
challenges. He's won 2 challenges in vastly different shells in a Mardu mid-range deck with
What?
Flage in there. So Flage, and then just mono black scam. Like I don't even know how they're flipping it, but they're doing it. So
Oh,
just random decks. Oh, they got Soul Spike's Necro Dominance. Okay. So that's how they do it. And then also Shieldred. So Soren is actually there, but numbers wise, it's Ral with Ruby Storm. He's a key part of that archetype, and there's like a billion Storm decks out there. So those 2 are the most popular. Grist is nowhere to be seen. Surprisingly, a Johnny, not that popular. Johnny's like incredibly powerful. And then we talked about Tamio. So I expect a Johnny to go somewhere, but I don't know, maybe Bowmasters is too much for him. But I would expect eventually someone to get something done. But so far, the Boros decks have been all on the Doggo Flage kind of plan and not the Ajani plan.
although I know the Boros Energy deck, at least the build I played was playing Ajani's in it. So that might be like one of the homes that you can play it in.
I lied. That Mardu deck has 3 Ajanis in it.
Oh, it's got
Mardu deck
Ajani.
that won the challenge has 3 Ajanis
Flipwalker
in it.
Tribal. So they've all been seeing some amount of play, which I guess is a success, like compared to past Flipwalkers. Oh, I want to ask you too. So there's one card, Legacy, obviously very powerful format, even more so than Modern or Timeless. There's one card we haven't talked about at all that is actually the card having the biggest impact on Legacy from the set. Any guesses what the sleeper hit is that we haven't talked about?
Some unplayable
when it
commander
comes to
card with the new
Legacy,
mechanic.
it's
Edition.
adventuring.
It's
Initiative, yeah.
actually Psychic Frog. Psychic Frog is taking over Legacy.
What
It
does
is
that
showing up
do?
in a ton of different decks. Psychic Frog, 2-mana 1/2. When it deals combat damage, you draw a card. You can discard a card to put a counter on it, and you exile 3 cards to give it flying till end of turn. It's showing up in a lot. So Reanimator/Scam is already one of the best archetypes in the format heading into MH3, and this fits perfectly into it. You can pitch it to your Griefs. You can pitch it to Subtleties if you're playing that. You can discard your reanimation targets like a Traxa or whatever if you have them in hand. So it's developed into like this sneaky all-star in what Legacy players have been saying might be the best deck in the format now, coming out of Modern Horizons 3. So yeah, Psychic Frog might actually be like the truth in Legacy.
Why is this not good in Modern then? Can't we do all those same shenanigans?
Yes, we don't have Reanimate. We're missing Reanimate, but I guess
we
you
have
can use
Goryo's
Persist, maybe
Vengeance, Persist or whatever.
Goryo's
but-
Vengeance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll develop. Maybe we'll end up there as well. So yeah, it's been also limited. This I can get a little off topic. Have you done any drafts with Modern Horizons 3?
Nope.
I have not.
I played
Apparently, I mean, people love their limited, and apparently limited is kind of a little bit broken in this format because of Writhing Chrysalis, which is the Gruul common 4-mana 2/3. Then when ETBs, you make 2 spawn tokens, and that has reach, and when you sack an Eldrazi, you put a counter on it. Apparently, the people who crunch the numbers, there's a site called 17 Lands that does all like limited data tracking. Apparently, this is the all-time best common that has ever been printed as far as since they've started tracking data, which only goes back like 3 or 4 years, but it has a 66.5% win rate when you actually play it in your game. So it's the number 1 common in the history of Magic, which is kind of interesting.
I'm not surprised. I had it in my pool, and it was pretty damn good.
Was it pretty good?
Yeah, like, and I only had I had 2.
66.5% good.
Whoo! Honestly,
so if you
I
look
would
at the
build around
17
it.
land stats, the one right after it, and there's like 4 or 5 cards there, it's like 63.5. So it's like 3 percentage points. So while it is the best card, it's not like it like blows everyone out of the
Way off the
water.
chart.
Yeah, and I played limited during travel preps time. If you
Oh
remember that
God.
card,
Oh,
I'm curious what those
yep.
stats would be, but travel preps was was the bee's knees. But I imagine it'd be just as high up here. But that's kind of interesting. But I also saw a complaint regarding sealed. So we're using play boosters now. And the
Yep.
complaint was in sealed, you didn't have enough commons to make a coherent deck. It's 1 to 2 colors. And you ended up having to go to like 3-4 colors to get a coherent deck. And
Ooh.
that was facilitated by the additional lands, but you'd get like the list cards and some foil rares or whatever, and you wouldn't have enough of the meat and potatoes to make an uncommon / common base deck.
Interesting.
And I don't know how widespread that was, but I saw that complaint on Reddit. And I'm like, that's interesting. And that was the move to play boosters that would kind of cause this, right? Because they ate up some of those lower rarity slots to try to make the packs more fun. So that was interesting.
It's kind of funny because that was something that was one of the fears people had when they announced play boosters, is that sealed in specific would end up getting wrecked by them. Although the complaint at the time was people were more worried about like all the bombs because of the
Yeah.
multiple rares in the pack, that like people would just have these supercharged decks and you'd run into someone with the unbeatable deck. I don't remember people talking about just like the lack of commons, which is kind of
this person
interesting. I
actually
hadn't
called
considered
that out.
either.
They said it's not like you're getting more bombs. It's like you're actually getting more like unplayable commander cards. And you're missing the commons and uncommons. Not that everyone's like running mythics and like, destroying the pods, right? So that's kind of interesting.
That is interesting. Oh, speaking, okay, we gotta mention this because this is just kind of funny. This came up this week. So this involves a specific Modern Horizons 3 card, which is Wheel of Potential. So I totally missed this until it started popping up on the internet, so people realize this and we're talking to judges. So if you read Wheel of Potential closely, 3 mana sorcery, it says you get 3 energy counters, then you may pay X energy, period. And then it has a new paragraph that says, each player may exile their hand and draw X cards. If X is 7 or more, you may play the cards in exile until the end of your X turn. The way this card is written, the energy production in paying energy is not actually attached to the drawing cards ability. Like, under the rules of the game, that second ability is a standalone ability, which is technically pay 3 mana, each player can exile their hand and draw as many cards as they want to, is what judges have actually like ruled this wording means. And the energy production is just a standalone thing. This became a big thing and got the judges involved. Eventually yesterday, WotC finally came out and said it was basically a mistake. They shouldn't have printed it with this wording because yes, you're right, under the rules, that is how this card would work, but we didn't mean it to work that way. So please don't play it that way, basically.
So they errated it. I mean, Hostage Taker was this, right? Hostage Taker, I think
They did
could
have
target
to, yeah.
itself or
Itself.
something on print, and you
Yeah.
could just draw the game
Go infinite with
immediately.
itself, yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, oh no, we got errata this. So I assume they're just gonna errata this to make it work. But if X is undefined, it can be infinite. Is that what we're saying? Like without the first
Apparently,
part?
yes. Without the first
Uh,
part, the X is just pay whatever you want and draw the cards. So
It's necro dominance, guys.
Everybody
is.
gets one.
We also have a bunch more secret lair drops coming out, which are gonna be coming up soon. I want to ask you about one in specific though. So they're doing this Not a Wolf secret lair drop, which Not a Wolf, the cards look cool. They've spoiled some of them. Not a Wolf though, as far as I know, and correct me, maybe y'all know more about this than I do. I thought it was just like a humorous Twitter account. Are we actually doing secret lairs for humorous Twitter accounts with like 100 some thousand followers? Like, is that secret lairable? That's my question. Like, is that actually meet the criteria to be a secret lair drop?
I mean, I don't know what Not a Wolf is.
So
Okay.
apparently Not a Wolf has some connection to Wizards. I don't know, like they either used to work for Wizards or they like had their hand in designing products or something with Wizards.
Okay.
So it's not an out of left field thing. But I will say it's a bad look. It like kind of just looks like nepotism or something, right? Like to me, this is an egregious break of immersion. Like
Yeah.
I remember there was some card game, and they made Rudy from Alpha Investments. They just put him in the game.
Oh,
And I
that's
don't know
so
why. Like
cringe.
he was either like a big supporter
Oh,
of them or something. But
yeah.
then you're like, what the hell, right? Like my immersion, I could get Spider-Man in here, okay? But like, why is like a real world person in here? And like for very little gain, in my opinion. So Post Malone also appeared in Magic cards, but you're like, okay, I get it, right? Like they're trying to sell packs. I'll give them this one, but I don't know that Not a Wolf is a big enough draw to kind of break this immersion, right? So I feel it's a bit weird. But I
The
think they're
art's
just
nice
banking on the fact
though.
that it's funny. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
maybe if you don't know who Not a Wolf is or anything, and you're just like, it's Not a Wolf. I mean, I don't really get the joke, but it could possibly be funny, right? Just as a standalone.
And And if you look at the cards, most of the cards actually look pretty good. They look like solid secret lair drop cards. They just have like interesting wolf art on them. So a lot of them aren't even tied directly to the Not a Wolf, whatever that is. Like you could sell them as just like a random secret lair drop. So I guess it's fine. It struck me as just a little bit weird too. It's
Is
like,
this
I don't know
the
why we're doing a
key
secret lair drop of this of all things, but
MTG Finance playset? This is the opposite Richard evaluation. So the secret lair is so bad that no one will buy it. Therefore, it's
yup.
super expensive, so you gotta go buy it. Is that one of these plays?
We've seen it. We've seen it
Whoa.
before. We've seen it before.
It's a
Although
real thing.
I honestly don't think, based on the response we've seen in the Magic community online, I don't think it's not going to be popular. I think it's, if you look on like the main Magic Reddit, a lot of the top posts from the past week are these cards being spoiled. Out of all the secret layers they've spoiled, they're the ones people are talking about the most. So I actually think it is going to be popular. So I like your logic, but I think this is actually going to be a
Miku didn't
successful
sell
lair
out.
drop.
Miku didn't sell out.
Oh,
Miku was super unpopular.
What?
interesting. Didn't the first one sell out super quickly, or did it not?
Yeah, the line
I
was like
I think people wanted like it was like the bundle sold out, but nothing else sold out or something like that. But
Oh.
like you could get Miku's up to the last minute, and people are like, "Did Wizards over hype the nerds or something?" Like it was a shock because normally the secret layers like sell out like so fast, right? So Miku didn't sell out, which was an interesting one.
but then
It's
if you try to buy the Miku drop, right? Is it like more or less now? Because I know like all the bundles sold out.
There's a new Miku drop coming too, right? Like
Yeah.
that
New one,
hasn't went up
too.
for sale yet. I'm pretty sure they announced the second one. It is kind of interesting that you can see how popular a secret lair drop is to some extent by tracking like if it sells out and when it sells out. You can kind of compare them to other secret lair drops that way. So that's interesting, at least. Okay, one last topic, and then we'll hit up a fish mail on the way out the door. So, Krim, on Arena, they're doing a different mastery pass this time around, where rather than a traditional mastery pass, it's kind of this like, I don't know, like prize wall essentially, where you win tickets and then you go to the store and you can trade them in for card styles or sleeves, or like, I think the biggest prize is like a draft entry for so many tickets. However, there's no gems as part of this track. There's also no free rewards as part of this track, and the price is only slightly discounted. I think normally it's 3,200 gems. This time it's 2,800 gems. But the traditional prize track also gives you back a bunch of gems. So if you consider the gems you'd earn from the prize track, it's actually more expensive than the traditional one. I've seen a lot of complaints about this. My question for you is, are you buying the Mastery Pass for Modern Horizons 3? Do you think it's worth it? Because I've mostly just seen complaints and people saying it's not worth it. Just wait for Bloomborough. Like, don't spend your gems on this one. But I'm curious what you think on it, because you play a lot of Arena.
Not only do I play a lot of Arena, I play a lot of games in general. I see why the community's mad at this. I see why they'd be very mad about it. But I also understand what's happening here. And if you've played any video game, they have now incorporated the gacha mechanic into everything. This is a gacha.
Yeah.
Like I play TFT. You can now, they make 15 different currencies within the game. Right? Like, and it's all cosmetics. It's all cosmetics. Right? And just like that, this whole track is a lot of cosmetics. And so because I think it's cosmetics, you don't need to buy it. I don't care for it. I'm not buying it because I don't believe, I do not I will not get got by the gotchas.
That's so wrong.
Richard-
Krim is the king of cosmetics.
Yo,
That is true.
I love
I found this
cosmetics.
random promo secret lair thing. Gotta get it. It's like $80,000.
In paper form, I will get the cosmetics because I like them. In digital form, dude, no. I don't do the different currencies. I don't go on the random tracks. No, I barely do the master pass, right? Like I am going to save my gems and buy the normal things that I want that I can actually affect my gameplay. So like that online, that is. So is it surprising that they did this? No, because every game throws that stupid, like, oh, gotcha track, 15 different currencies into the game. So it's just like, cool.
Yeah.
They're just late to the party. That's all I got from that. So I'm not buying it. I don't think it matters unless you care about cosmetics.
Yeah, I guess if you really want the cosmetics, maybe it's worth it. I don't know if there's another way to get those cosmetics or not. I haven't actually looked into that. I also am not going to get it. And I would say if you're thinking about getting it, there's really no reason to do it now at all because you earn tickets even if you don't pay for it. And then you could wait till the last day. And if you decided I have like so many tickets that it's worth it for me for some reason, then you could choose to pay for it and spend all your tickets on it. So I would say at least wait and see how many tickets you end up with. And then if you decide it's worth it, do it. But it does seem like kind of a sketchy gotcha game thing that's adding a third currency to Arena that we definitely don't need.
It's one of those
gotcha games are, first of all, Magic is the OG gotcha game. Okay, let's not forget about this. You buy a booster pack, you don't know what you're gonna get. So let's not pretend like other people invented gotcha gaming. We are the OG gotcha game. Okay, so let's not pretend we don't want to crack some packs with our mastery pass or whatever. We are the gotcha game.
I mean, look,
if it gave me packs, I'd maybe buy it. But the problem is what
that new card smell, I would get it. But this is outrageous.
Anyway, I think those are all of our big topics for today. But we got time for a fish mail. So Richard, why don't you fish mail us?
All right, if you have questions, hit us up on Twitter at MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail. 11 Vicious. I had the choice of either going to MagicCon Vegas or the Lorcana Challenge in Vegas. I picked Lorcana because I felt the prize structure was better. How do you feel about Wizards prizes for larger tournaments? Have you seen that gold Mickey card yet?
So I have seen the gold Mickey card.
You have? Why do you know what the gold Mickey Mouse card looks like, Seth?
Because there's a big crossover between Magic players and Lorcana players, and like Frank Karsten got Mickey. Frank Karsten got Mickey like one of 500 or something, and sold it for however many tens of thousands of dollars. It was like absurdly valuable. So I've seen it because of that. Just Magic people winning them and talking about them. I mean, we do have the worst prize structure, right? You were telling me this about One Piece recently, how like One Piece regionals, it's worth signing up for just because of all the free stuff you get. And then if you do well, you get like super valuable high-end cards. So I feel like we are kind of lagging behind other games as far as the rewards for signing up for paper tournaments.
Dude, Magic, look, I love Magic. You know I love Magic. We all love Magic here. Let's not lie to ourselves. We proudly wear that we have the worst prize structure. like, oh my God, is our tournament structure, like prize-wise, it's the worst. Like, a huge part of why I stopped being a sweat lord is because if you don't win everything, it doesn't matter. Right? Like, you simply just do not win everything, it doesn't matter. And when a tournament with good prize structure is on the line, I actually care. Right. And other than that, it's just like, whatever, just like I'm memeing my way through the day. Like the price structure between an F&M and a big event aren't that much different unless you win it all. You have to win it all like that. And that's just like, I remember, I think I top 16 to random GP and I think I got like $3,000. Right. It's like, dude, that's not good. That's like not good. And in One Piece, you would get way more than that. Right? Like you would get way better price structure. Lorcana, every other game coming out right now knows that how they revive their tournament scene is they make things actually worth going to.
Couldn't Wizards fix it?
They don't even give money.
They don't. Well, I was gonna say, couldn't they just do the Olympics
card,
thing
put a serialized stamp on it, and people eat it up for like $20,000. Right? It doesn't cost Wizards any money at all. They can give everyone like participation. Like you sign up for MagicCon Vegas, you get a mana vault. You get $100
A
card.
Tarmogoyf.
Boom.
You get a goyf.
Okay, well, no, come on.
You get a mox.
Goyf.
You get a mox.
We were
opal
trying
or
to get
something.
people to go.
Oh, right.
It costs Wizards nothing. They have so much reprint equity, and it doesn't even matter because they're power creeping all the old cards anyway. So they should be giving out $100 cards like candy at these events, and that's the secret. Like One Piece is not forking over cash, right? They're just forking over this random card. Same with the Mickey Mouse card. It's just a random card, which costs
whatever we assign the value to.
Yeah,
is what
it costs
get.
like $1 to print or whatever, right? So Wizards could just make, super special Ragavan monkey, give them out, right, to the winners, and then give the participants like $100 card, right? And then people would go. And every other card game has figured this out. I don't know why Wizards, with like the deepest reprint equity, like the biggest fan base ever, hasn't figured it out. But
I told you all this. I went to the worst event of my life, the worst tournament I've ever seen in my life, and that was One Piece Regionals or Nationals. But despite that, I chose the round 1 loss just because the participation like cards was like $400 in value. Just to participate. So, like, if you can give out participation cards that can at least make it so that, hey, you traveled all this way, you went anywhere, here, have these cards. They're not even good cards. They were just cards that had different art and a stamp that you were at a certain spot. You do that with, like, MagicCon, whatever, right? MagicCon, like Manitoba. Then boom,
Manitoba.
right there. Slap that
every
stamp on
MagicCon, a different fetch land. And after 10 MagicCons, you get the full set. And then that'll incentivize people to go to all the different MagicCons, right? Like that.
Yep.
Imagine if they gave you that instead of like freaking Soul Ring. Here's Soul Ring. Here's Arcane Signet.
And they're set up to do it because they print secret lair drops all the time. Like, just do a print run of like some special card and like hand it out to people to get them to go. It seems so obvious. But going back to the original comment, I think they probably made the right choice from a sweaty perspective, right? If you're just like trying to get the most value out of your money when it comes to playing in a tournament, I assume that going for the Golden Mickey at Lorcana is probably better than whatever you would likely win at MagicCon Vegas. I would like to say MagicCon Vegas probably going to be a bigger con experience. I don't know. Maybe the Lorcana scene is like massive and I don't realize it, but I think if you want like the con experience and jamming like Commander and a weekend of stuff like that, I think that's why you go to the Magic Con, not for the sweaty aspect of it. But from the tournament grinder perspective, Lorcana is probably the right choice, as painful as it is to actually say that.
I don't know if it is or isn't, right?
I just
because you don't just get a Golden Mickey, right? You have to win the Golden Mickey.
No,
so that's the same as winning it all, right? But like the question is, at the lowest rank on the whatever the ladder, the tournament standings, what are you getting? Do you get participation like rewards and stuff? Just participating in a Lorcana event, because I don't know what you get for just going to one of these. I know Lorcana events struggle to fire around my area, and if they do, it's at the exact minimum they have to hit to fire events here. So I don't know how popular Lorcana is, but I could see why they're pulling out all the stops.
Well, I can tell you, Krim, One Piece participation is worth more than the price you paid. Right?
Yeah, easily. I mean, I know,
it's like easily worth
generous,
more, right? Like you just go and scrub out and you're good to go. And it's actually the best way to acquire cards, actually. People like go to Walmart, try to buy One Piece cards. Like that's actually very difficult. You sign up for regionals and scrub out, and then you get some packs. So that's actually
everyone
the easiest way to do it.
Can go O2 and actually pay for sushi.
Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of our episode for today. Richard, where should people send in their questions for the future?
All right. Hit us up on Twitter at MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
So, as I said, that brings us to the end of episode 489 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So, Richard Krim, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we will be back next week to talk about Assassin's Creed spoilers and whatever else goes on in the world of Magic. So, until then, have an amazing week, everyone. And this is a crew signing out.